Hey everyone, welcome back to another Stoneface Reactions manga review. This time for Chapter 4 of Gundam 00F. This time it is Celestial Being versus Fereshte, otherwise known as Angel, to all the previous recordings we've done. So let's just jump on into it. We start off with a sweet two-panel spread of the Taklamakan Desert. One half of the panel showing just the smoking wreckages of battles in the distance with Automatopoeia. You know, I think we've previously talked about it. The Automatopoeia is just unreadable to me, so I'm sorry I don't know what it means. While the second half shows what I assume to be the Abul in transformation mode, zooming over it. Further along, we see that it is once again Fawn and Hanyo in the cockpit. Surveying the damage below, Fawn spots the Exia, and this is going to be corrected in the next page. But what I first thought looked like it was underwater. Um, just imagine if you were trying to draw what the shadows or what the rays of light look like when they're cast upon something, and that's what that looked like to me. Our next page is a spread showing Ali in that one monstrosity we saw in that season 1 episode. I want to say it was in the 20s. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. That is, it's taking place here, which gives us the time. So I guess if I had bothered to look that up, I apologize. He's positioned over top the Exia and is shocking the hell out of it with a plasma field. I frankly can't remember of the thing got named in the episode, but we clearly see the name written out here as Agrissa. Normally, I like to look up what these things mean, but this one was very elusive. The closest verifiable thing I could find was that Agrissa is a place in Greece known for the remains of its prehistoric beer hall. Not really a hall, more like a place that beer was made and distributed. If that fits a beer hall, then I was right the first time. Anyways, Fawn makes a comment about the Agrissa being a relic left over from the solar conflict, but notes that the Exia is in trouble and asks if he should lend a hand. Hanyo states that Veda's instructions are for Angel to stand by, to which Fawn is indignant. I think this has been a running thing throughout all the Gundam series so far, that there is some last war that we always get told about. In IBO was the Calamity War, in Witch from Mercury it's the Drone Wars, and here now we have the Solar Conflict. We then get a hazy fawn, which is our segue into a flashback, and we go back to another meeting room to introduce today's mission mid-conversation. Chal has already started giving exposition, and we come in on Echo already asking questions. We are informed that the Union, AEU, and HRL are performing a joint military exercise for the first time in history, but that it is just a ruse to lure in Celestial Being and the Gundams. Vaughn is present in the meeting room, as always, positioned on one of the two bars in the back, with his hands once again bound in handcuffs. I believe that's just the default state for him. In excitement, no doubt driven by the hopes of being assigned to sortie, Echo says that this must mean it is their job to protect the Gundams of Ptolemos, which is just an odd way to call out the main Celestial Being team. They do that a lot. I guess in this sense, they are just referring to Celestial Being as the overall whole of the group. And when they mean the main team, they say the Ptolemos crew. But overall, it seems like they mainly just. I don't know. In my head, when they say Celestial Being, I refer to Celestial Being, the main crew, because they don't have the code name thing. As far as I know, they're just celestial being. Chal immediately shuts him down with a flat no, informing him that Veda has instructed them to remain on standby. Echo asks what she means, and she guesses that this might be to avoid the capture of angel units if things go south. In the background of the last panel, I believe, is the Pluton, reflecting on her Charles' own connection to the specific unit for an unspecified reason. I've heard that there is a prequel to 00F, which covers Shaw's whole thing, which I wish would have been told to me first, but when I asked for a reading order, 00F was the first one that got thrown out. So here we are. Until the end. Once again, Echo excitedly shouts out his understanding of the situation, that if Ptolemos loses its Gundams, that they will be the only hope left. Vaughn calls him an idiot immediately, and once again leans into calling him old, which is always weird to me because Echo doesn't look old. As Echo grinds his teeth and curses Vaughn's existence, our resident edgelord questions what advantage they might have from holding back. That if their enemy is powerful enough to capture 4 Gundams, then there isn't much point in continuing the fight with just their one machine. Echo broods over this, thinking out loud over the question before turning to blame Fawn directly. Echo establishes dominance with the Phoenix Wright objection pose, pointing at Fawn's back and exclaiming that it's Veda's decision to put a stop to his misconduct. As Fawn simply hums at this, Echo is left in confusion at the possibility that he may have won an argument with Fawn. Chal chimes back in to state that Veda's decision is final. Fawn stands up, off of the bar, as Chal begins to address him again. And Fawn literally says, "Fuck this, I'll do what I want," and walks out of the room with a flying Hanyo chasing after him. Chal tells him that he can't take the Gundam, but he just looks back and says that in this kind of operation there are tons of ways to slip in. Hanyo at the same time is just floating around Fawn, signaling that they are going to keep watch. Now, we've previously been on Earth for the last few missions, but we must currently be in space, as the next panel has Fawn floating down a hallway. I suppose I should have pieced that all together when Hanyo was floating, but I guess I just didn't put it beyond Hanyo's capabilities to just fly. In that hallway, the unnamed girl is waiting and asks if Fawn is going, questioning him about the fact that they've been put on standby. She explains that Veda follows Scheinberg's plans from hundreds of years ago and must be followed. I think this page struck me as odd, as Fawn is treated like a criminal, but also part of the hierarchy. And despite both of these things, he can just walk out of a room saying that he is going to disobey direct orders and do what he wants. And nobody's really going to stop him. He's already shown he can operate a computer console just fine with the handcuffs on. It seems likely he could launch a Gundam just fine, which should raise some red flags to stop him if anyone cared. Funny observation. The unnamed girl continues, name dropping Master Ian, which I assume is the Ian we know from the show, as saying that obeying Veda is law. Bond retorts that even Veda isn't perfect. You hear that, commenters? Even Veda isn't perfect. And it could have been hacked. The girl seems shocked by this, saying it's impossible, but Fawn says he's going to clear that up. Apparently that was enough to sway her, as she then asks Hanyo to release his handcuffs. We get a moment of thought from Hanyo before they agree, and Fawn's handcuffs release. Fawn asks if that's all right, and Hanyo says it was their decision, for which Fawn thanks them. So another page that just implies something about this new dynamic. At first, it seemed like Hanyo and the unnamed girl just hung out together, but the new implication is that Hanyo is Fawn's jailer. Every time Fawn needs to be freed from his cuff, Hanyo is present to be the one doing it. Like, sometimes people tell Hanyo to do it, but even here, Hanyo's like, this is my choice, release. So, the next page is a jump back to the present, back to where Ali had the Exia pinned beneath the Agressia, except now the first appearance of a Throne Gundam saves Setsuna, and we get a "That's a Gundam" scene played out in tandem by both Hanyo and Fawn. Going back to the asteroid base, we rejoin Chal and Echo as they look over the readouts of the three Throne Gundams on their big screen. Echo looks on in disbelief, commenting on how Gundam units like these could exist and nobody knew about them. Chal mentions that it's no different than how the main CB crew doesn't know about how their existence is, so it isn't strange to consider that another team has been kept from the both of them. In the last panel, we get a shot of what I think is Shaw's old team that was pictured in Chapter 1, though it is hard to tell, as the one on the left bears a strong resemblance to Echo. Again, I'm bad with faces. I've said this 100 times, so don't blame me if I'm wrong. Just kindly correct me, please. And don't spoil. And the one on the right is the ghost from last chapter, it looks like. Hell, the middle one could be the engineer if I squint hard enough. Chal is saying that the new Gundams were not amongst the ones her comrades developed at Krung Thep. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but I did the research, and it's worth noting that Krung Thep is just another name for Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. So they could be using code names and calling a place Bangkok. I don't know. Didn't read that one yet. We'll do that one next, okay? Echo and Shaw continue wondering what to do with the control room as Veda tells them to remain on standby. Echo wonders what will happen next. In the hangar bay, the unnamed girl, Hanyo, and Fawn are hanging around one of the Gundams. Fawn seems to be up to something with a laptop as the girl tells him that she secretly contacted Master Ian from the main Celestial Being crew. To eschew any doubt, we also get a scribble of him that makes him look so much older and angrier than he does in the show. I guess especially since the last episode we watched of the show was him like, hey, here's my wife, and, you know, his daughter thing, so he seemed happier in that episode, which made him look younger. She continues to tell him that the solar furnaces that the Thrones use are different and confirms his earlier suspicions that Veda may have been hacked. We then get the most batshit crazy thing in the entire manga run so far. Hanyo turns into a Pokeball, leaping to the floor, splitting open, and emitting the ghost person from before, that seemed to appear out of nowhere last issue. Well, now we know where they came from. Just going to wait for the Pokemon Gundam crossover for now. We get a full shot of the newish character again, illustrating an extremely odd choice in clothing. I suppose I'm not one to comment on appearances when I seem to show up to most of these videos in the same outfit. But it's a child in garters. Not great option to me. Then exposed but belted midriff also shown off. The new character states that Veda is the primary source of information towards completion of the plan, and that it is perfect. If Veda has approved thus, If Veda has approved the activation of the thrones, they will obey Veda's instructions. The unnamed girl then goes into self-doubt as Hanyo has a direct link with Veda, so whatever she says can't be wrong. This confirms that the name of the Haru and the girl inside are both Hanyo at the very least. Fawn interjects that it is possible that Hanyo is getting fooled, just like everyone else. Fawn goes on to point out that Hanyo is a big girl. Just sorry, we've been doing ranking of kings, so I'm just using. We're big boys now. We're big boys. We're big boys now. Hanyo is a big girl that should stop depending on her parents, since they have a separate personality from Veda. Hanyo claims that they have a terminal connecting. I'm sorry, that they are only a terminal connecting Veda and celestial being, which is a confusing statement to be added on top of Fawn's. As far as we are in the show at the time, we've seen the innovators can control terminals with their minds, so I have to wonder if Hanyo is just an innovator being stored in a Pokeball. The engineering girl tells Hanyo that that this isn't true, and we finally get the girl's name as Hanyo says it to her. And disappointingly, it isn't a short sound-based name like Echo and Charles were, Chal Acoustica, as it is Sherilyn. Vaughn leans back and says, Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. They're going to explain it in the next page, but I think anyone who's ever seen Latin said anywhere knows what this means. It's not a mystery. Vaughn gets up and indicates to Hanyo, and here you are, right? Before taking off across the hangar and leaving the two girls behind. Apparently common Latin phrases are not so common in the future anymore, as Sherilyn is left confused. So Hanyo repeats it once more and expresses its English meaning, which I just said in the previous page, because it's basic. Back in the control room, we get a shot of Echo and Chal watching a monitor as we get a familiar crawl of a ship approaching the base. Almost the same exact face on shot of a radiation symbol that the Thrones crew ship gave us when they met with the main CB group. To further emphasize that these are the Thrones crew, we see a headshot of the three Thrones Gundams in the final panel. Echo is clearly shocked that a spacecraft is coming, and in the next panel exclaims, "Those Gundams!" Clearly recognizing them from the readouts they were looking at not just panels ago, as we are now looking at them having launched ahead of the ship in the monitor view that serves as the backdrop for the page. Even Chal is questioning why they came to Angel. Another set of sound onomatopoeia goes off, and Chal pulls out a tablet, reading out that it is an emergency transmission from Veda. She quizzically says, the O Gundam. I'm sorry, it's either the O Gundam or the Zero Gundam. We call it Gundam 00. This has a zero in it. Maybe I should say the Zero Gundam. Zero Gundam. Before a look of shock comes over her and she collapses to the floor. Echo loudly asks what's wrong, but is interrupted by the monitor switching to a communications as one of the throne cockpits is fuzzily displayed and the person on screen grabs their attention. We then switch views to go out to the source of the communication, and once again I am really bad with faces, especially ones in helmets, but I believe this is meant to be Johann Trinity speaking, as he announces that Veda's instructions have already arrived and that GN 000 is to be transferred to them, along with their only solar furnace. Since Charles is still on the floor, Echo responds with a desperate look on his face that if they don't have a solar furnace, they won't be able to operate their Gundams. We get the single eye panel of Johann as it cuts to the heart of the matter, telling them not to worry as Angel will be disbanded. Chaw looks absolutely destroyed in the final panel as she laments that her comrade's legacy, Angel Fereshte, is going to be disbanded. We then get a two-page spread where the action seems to start kicking off. Echo immediately blames Fawn for always acting on his own, but Fawn cuts into the communications to ask what Echo does. As I guess it implies Echo does nothing, or Echo only talks, I don't know. From her hunched position on the floor, Chaw looks up towards the monitor and shouts Fawn's name. We then get the action shot of Fawn flying out in one of the Gundams and the three Thrones pilots commenting that he's the criminal Gundam Meister and a bad guy. My face blindness really came into play here as I had a real hard time telling Michael's face from Nina's. I guess if I was really paying attention, Nina has like freckles and Michael doesn't, but they both got kind of feminine faces. It's hard to tell in a drawing, I guess. I don't know. I'm bad. I'm bad with faces. Hanyo evidently supports whatever is happening here as she releases Fawn's handcuffs, which is always the prelude to action in the last few chapters. Upon release, Fawn immediately pulls his Gundam's energy sword from its holster. Thankfully, the Throne pilots were kind enough to identify the Gundam for me, as they mentioned it as to one another as the Pluton, and that has made its appearance, and that he's apparently ready to go all out. Johann confronts Fawn directly, asking if he intends to go against Veda's orders, warning him that if he should do so, the bomb on his neck will be. But he gets cut off by Fawn before he can finish the thought, as he shouts back in laughter that this is fun and isn't going to be handing over the Gundam, as he apparently charges at the three of them with his saber out. I will say, this does explain his choker fashion choice as more than just being edgy, while at the same time being an incredibly small bomb. It would be funny to me if all of Fawn's fashion choices were actually things meant to impede him, and he's not as an edgelord as he appears to be, and he's just weighed down by all this shit. In a full-on action page, we see the Pluton clashing with one of the thrones. I don't recognize it by the looks of it, but if the faces at the bottom of the page mean anything, then I would guess it would be the SWI, as it appears to be in the line art of Michael Trinity on the bottom left. Once again, bad with faces, could be wrong. Moving back to Johann, we see that he calls Fawn foolish, and not wanting to engage in this fight, he orders their Haru to report to Veda that Fawn's spark has rebelled against it. Fawn seems to be in the height of enjoyment in the cross-section we get of him, as the next is clearly meant to be the sound of the neck bomb detonating, with the black splatter of blood. I just want to also mention that I always enjoy how the Throne's Haru consistently looks evil, and can only wonder what Pokemon it must contain inside. The next page is a two-page spread of the coolest shot in the chapter, and most likely all the chapters thus far. We get a color-inverted action shot of Fawn's explosive going off. The entire scene is drawn in black, with the lines in white, which adds an edginess to it. The space just below his helmet is obviously expanded to emphasize the explosion, alongside the shining white lines around it. We also get these onomatopoeia text drops in the most hardcore edging yet. All in all, amazing spread. I love this. I love these panels. The next page continues from inside the cockpit, with reaction shots from the rest of the Angel crew, while Fawn seems to be hanging lifeless in his seat. Hanyo announces that his neck restraint has been detonated and that he is suffering from severe blood loss and dropping blood pressure. There are a number of things going on in this page to make everything seem real. Blood splatter in Fawn's mask, Hanyo's ears drooping. There's something about the previous interactions between them in the chapter that makes me feel like this is all, I don't know, pre-planned, set up from earlier, and this is a trick that Hanyo is perpetrating. I don't know, my supposition, because it doesn't really get proven either way in this chapter. Michael then goes and kicks the lifeless, I'll say his lifeless, the lifeless Pluton away from him, despite the fact they are here to capture it. Seems kind of a stupid move. If you're here to get it, you would pull it closer, or I don't know. He insults Fawn by saying the stupid idiot went and died. He's going to tell Fawn to blame himself, even though it's too late for that, when Pluton starts to move again, and one of Michael's crew shouts a warning to not let his guard down. Going back to a view of the Pluton's cockpit, we see a manic-looking Fawn hunched over the controls, face mask still coated in blood, eyes wide, just behind them. The blood, I mean. Hanyo announces that he has about 10 minutes left until heart and lung failure. And our final panel looks to be a mirror of Fawn's face over the Plutons as shit seems to be starting to go down. I loved this chapter even more than the rest. It lacked certain elements that I loved from before, like Lock On getting owned, which I always love. But we still got a good shot of Setsuna on his back, which is always fun to see. We finally got a name for one of the Angel team and the Ghost Kid finally got explained to us. It makes no bloody sense, but hey, we watch Symphogear on this channel, so if you can't explain it, then just go as crazy as you can and make it fun. So now we got Pokeball Haru. Another drawback is that we didn't get what the chapter was named for, or at least what was expected from me. Typically, Celestial Being refers to the main crew, so I expected the main crew to fight Angel. I can see where the Throne's team in this moment could be considered Celestial Being as well. Just a bit of a letdown is all. Overall, this chapter had more drama and more amazing art than any previous chapter. So, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but compared to everything that came before it, it's damn near closer to it than I would have expected. So, thank you for joining me here again with another chapter of Gundam 00F, and I will catch you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stone-Faced Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?